Did you know that during World War II, American service members sent and received over 37 billion pieces of mail? That is not a typo. Billions. Imagine mountains of paper, envelopes, and V-mail forms crisscrossing oceans and continents, connecting lonely soldiers to the world they left behind. This wasn't just communication. It was a lifeline. It was the only thing that made the war feel real and home feel possible. Each letter was a tiny piece of a person's soul, sent thousands of miles. A soldier in a muddy foxhole in France could, for a few minutes, be back in his mother's kitchen, smelling apple pie. A young woman working in a factory in Ohio could hear her husband's voice in the words he wrote from a ship in the Pacific. These letters were not grand historical documents. They were about the little things: a leaky tent, a bad meal, a friend who told a funny joke, a dream about a green lawn. They were about love, fear, boredom, and hope. But what did they really say? What secrets did they hold between the lines, past the watchful eyes of the censors? How do you tell your family you are terrified without worrying them to death? How do you ask your sweetheart to wait for you when you don't know if you will ever come back? This is the story of that global conversation, told through the simple, powerful, and often heartbreaking words of those who lived it. It is a story about how a world at war stayed connected by ink and paper. Number 23. How do you say goodbye when you might not come back? The letter feels stiff in his hands. The paper is cheap, the kind they give you at the processing center. He sits on the edge of his cot, the barracks buzzing with the nervous energy of 100 other young men. They are all trying to look tough. They are all failing. Outside, the train waits. It will take them to a port, and the port will take them to a ship, and the ship will take them to somewhere. They don't know where. He starts to write. Dearest Mom, well, we are shipping out soon. Can't say where, you know how it is. The training was tough, but I feel ready. I'm with a good bunch of guys. We look out for each other. Don't you worry about me, I'll be fine. That I'm strong, you raised me right. Remember that time I fell out of the apple tree and broke my arm? You were so scared, but I told you it didn't even hurt. This is kind of like that. It seems scary, but it's not so bad. I'll write as soon as I can from wherever we land. Or Jimmy. This letter is a lie. Of course he is scared. The knot in his stomach has been there for weeks. He is not thinking about the apple tree. He is thinking about the newsreels, the whispers, the boys who have already left and haven't written back. He is a boy, barely a man, dressed in a uniform that feels too big, holding a rifle he barely knows how to use. He writes, I'll be fine, because it is the only thing he can write. It is a shield for his mother, and maybe a prayer for himself. In 1942 alone, over 3 million American men were drafted into the armed forces. The Selective Training and Service Act of 1940 was the first peacetime draft in United States history. It was a massive, unprecedented mobilization. Young men were pulled from farms, factories, and college campuses. They were given a few short weeks of training designed to turn a civilian into a soldier. The process was a blur of paperwork, medical exams, inoculations, and drills. They learned how to march, how to shoot, how to obey orders without question. The final act before deployment was often writing this letter. The goodbye for now letter. It was a ritual performed in crowded barracks and on noisy transport ships across the country. These letters are remarkable for what they don't say. They are masterpieces of omission. They are filled with brave fronts and forced optimism. The historian Andrew Carroll, who has collected tens of thousands of war letters in his legacy project, notes that soldiers often downplayed the danger to protect their families. They were acting as emotional caretakers from thousands of miles away. The letters home were a soldier's last connection to his own identity. In the army, he was a number, a cog in a giant machine. But in a letter to his mother, he was still Jimmy. He could talk about his dad's car, a memory only they shared. This act of writing reaffirmed that he was still a person, a son, a brother, not just a uniform. But as the trains pulled away from the stations and the ships slipped out of the harbors under the cover of darkness, a profound silence fell between the soldier and his home. The letters would travel for weeks, sometimes months. By the time Jimmy's mother reads his brave words, he could be in a place he couldn't have imagined, facing a reality he could never describe. What we still do not know is perhaps the most human part of the story. How many of these final letters were written but never sent, crumpled up in frustration or fear? How many soldiers broke down while writing, hiding their tears from the men on the bunks next to them? And for the mothers and fathers who received these letters, did the forced bravery in their sons' words provide any real comfort at all, or did they see right through the lie to the terrified boy they loved? Number 22, can boredom be more terrifying than a battle? The ship smells of diesel fuel, sweat, and stale coffee. For 3 weeks, this has been his entire world. The gray sky, the gray ocean, the gray steel of the deck. There's nothing to do. Nothing but wait. He cleans his rifle for the 10th time. He plays cards until he is sick of it. He stares at the endless churning of the water. The boredom is a physical thing. It eats at you. It leaves too much time to think. He finds a quiet corner and pulls out a V-mail form. V-mail or victory mail was a brilliant piece of wartime logistics. A soldier wrote a letter on a special form. The form was photographed, reduced to a tiny piece of microfilm, and flown overseas. Back in the States, it was enlarged, printed, and delivered. One plane carrying microfilm could carry the equivalent of 37 mailbags of regular letters. It was a system designed for a global war, a way to shrink the world. My dear Stan, another day at sea. It's all the same. We eat, we sleep, we wait. The food is okay. The other guys are okay. We tell the same stories over and over. I miss your cooking. I miss our little apartment. I miss just sitting in a chair that isn't bolted to the floor. Last night I dreamed I was back home. We were just walking down Main Street. That's all, just walking. It felt so real. And then I woke up and I was here. Tell me everything. Tell me about your work at the factory. Tell me what Mrs. Henderson next door is complaining about now. Tell me about the dog. I need to hear the small things, the normal things. Don't leave anything out. It's the small things that I miss the most. All my love, Tom. Tom isn't facing enemy fire. He isn't storming a beach. He is facing a different kind of enemy, the vast, empty space of time and distance. The old military saying is that war is 90% boredom and 10% sheer terror. This letter comes from the 90%, and in some ways the boredom was harder to endure than the terror. The terror was a physical threat, the boredom was a threat to the mind. During the war, the U.S. military transported over 12 million service members overseas. The journey across the Atlantic could take 1 to 2 weeks. The trip across the Pacific could take a month or longer. These men were packed into troop transports, often in cramped, miserable conditions. They were in a state of suspended animation, cut off from their past and uncertain of their future. Email was their only tether. The writer Ernie Pyle, who became famous for his columns about the common soldier, wrote extensively about this way of waiting. He understood that the grand strategies of generals meant nothing to the man on the ground. For him, the war was about the immediate, the mundane. A dry pair of socks, a letter from home, a decent meal. Tom's request for the small things was a universal plea. Soldiers craved normalcy. They wanted to be reminded of a world where people worried about neighbors and dogs, not about torpedoes and air raids. The V-mail system itself, while efficient, was impersonal. The letters were small, the handwriting reproduced in a uniform black and white. There was no feel of the paper the sender had touched, no scent of home. Yet, over 1 billion V-mail letters were sent. It was a trade-off. Soldiers sacrificed intimacy for speed. Getting a letter in 2 weeks instead of 6 was worth it. It was a faster connection to sanity. The boredom could also be dangerous. It led to gambling, fights, and a slow erosion of morale. A mind with nothing to do can conjure up the worst fears. Is my wife okay? Is she still waiting for me? Does anyone even remember I'm Gone? A letter like Tom's, asking for the mundane details of life, was an attempt to fill the emptiness, to build a bridge of normalcy over an ocean of uncertainty. The questions that linger are about the psychological toll of this waiting. How many soldiers suffered from a kind of depression born not of combat, but of crushing monotony? Did the military understand the mental health impact of this prolonged limbo? And when Anne received Tom's letter, did she understand that his request for love for soul, small things, was not small at all, but a desperate plea for an anchor in a sea of nothingness? Number 21, is it possible to describe a new world in a letter? The air is thick, wet, and alive, with the sounds of insects he has never heard before. The jungle is a wall of green. Everything is damp. His clothes, his blanket, his letters from home. Nothing ever gets dry. He is in the Pacific. It might as well be another planet. The trees are wrong. The birds are wrong. The sky is a different color. You wouldn't believe this place, right? It's not like anything you've ever seen. The trees are so thick you can't see the sun. And the rain, it rains every day. Not like a good Iowa thunderstorm. This is a warm, sticky rain that never stops. There are bugs here the size of your thumb, and snakes, and things that crawl in the night. The other night, a lizard fell on my face while I was sleeping, scared the life out of me. We are all learning to live with the jungle. It's the enemy as much as the other guys are. Everything rots. Our boots, our letters, our skin. I'm covered in rashes, but we are getting used to it. We have to. How is the harvest coming? Is old man Hemlock still complaining about his fences? I'd give anything to be there, baling hay in the hot sun. At least it's a dry heat, your brother Sam's letters an attempt to bridge two completely different realities. He is trying to translate the alien world of the Pacific Theater into the familiar language of an Iowa farm. He compares the jungle rain to a thunderstorm. He talks about bugs and lizards. He is trying to make the incomprehensible comprehensible. The war in the Pacific was fundamentally different from the war in Europe. The environment itself was a constant adversary. Soldiers fought in dense jungles, on volcanic islands, and in humid, swampy conditions. They faced diseases like malaria, dengue fever, and dysentery. They dealt with constant fungal infections, a condition they called jungle rot. The historian John Dower, in his book War Without Mercy, describes the Pacific War as a more brutal and primal conflict, in part because of the brutal and primal environment. For millions of American soldiers, many of whom had never left their home states, this was a profound culture shock. A boy from Brooklyn was suddenly in the middle of a New Guinea rainforest. A farmer from Nebraska was on a coral atoll in the middle of the ocean. Their letters home are filled with attempts to describe these new strange worlds. They are amateur anthropological studies written from a foxhole. These letters served a dual purpose. First, they were a way for the soldier to process his own experience. By trying to describe the jungle to his brother, Sam is also trying to make sense of it for himself. Writing imposes a kind of order on chaos. Second, it was a way to keep his family connected to his new life. He didn't want to be a stranger to them. He wanted them to have some picture, however faint, of where he was and what he was seeing. Of course, the picture was always incomplete. Sam doesn't mention the fear. He doesn't describe the smell of death that hangs in the humid air. He doesn't talk about the enemy soldiers who use the jungle as a weapon, hiding in the canopy and in underground tunnels. He describes a lizard falling on his face, a humorous, relatable anecdote. He omits the story of the man next to him who was killed by a sniper he never saw. This was the self-censorship of love. The letters from the Pacific are a testament to human adaptability. As Sam says, we are getting used to it. We have to. And they did. They learned to, sleep in hammocks to avoid crawling things. They learned to live with the constant dampness. They learned to navigate a world that was trying to kill them in 100 different ways. But we are left wondering about the gap between experience and description. Did Frank, reading this letter in his quiet Iowa farmhouse, have any real idea of what Sam was going through? Could words ever truly capture the feeling of the jungle? And when Sam finally came home, would he ever be able to fully explain the world he had seen? Or would a part of him always be lost in that wall of green, impossible to describe? Number 20. How do you stay married across an ocean? The photograph is worn, the corners soft from being handled 1,000 times. It is a picture of his wife, smiling. He keeps it in his breast pocket, a fragile shield over his heart. He has been gone for a year. A year's a lifetime. He reads her letters over and over, his fingers tracing her familiar handwriting. He tries to remember the sound of her laugh. He sits down to write, the photo propped up in front of him. My darling Peggy, I got your last 2 letters yesterday. This mail call is the best day of the week. I read them so many times, I have them memorized. I love the picture of you in the garden. Your hair is getting so long, you look beautiful. It's hard being away from you, harder than I thought it would be. Sometimes at night, I close my eyes and I can almost feel you next to me. I think about our little house, about sitting on the porch with you after dinner. Those are the things I'm fighting for. Please don't be lonely. I know it's hard for you to go to the movies with your sister. Keep busy, and know that I am thinking of you every single minute of every day. This war can't last forever. Bill. This is a love letter from a war zone. It is a desperate attempt to keep a marriage alive on a diet of ink and memory. Bill is not just a soldier, he is a husband. And his biggest fear is not an enemy bullet, but the fear of drifting apart, of becoming a stranger to the woman he loves. The Second World War put an immense strain on millions of marriages. It was a period of long, uncertain separations. In 1940, before the U.S. entered the war, the divorce rate was about 2 per 1,000 people. By 1946, it had jumped to 4.3 per 1,000, a historic peak. The war created what sociologists call the furlough marriage, or the goodbye marriage, relationships that were forged in the emotional heat of departure and then tested by years of separation. Letters were the only tool couples had to maintain their intimacy. They were filled with expressions of love, reassurances of fidelity, and plans for the future. "When I get home, Will," was a common refrain. These future plans were a form of hope, a belief that there would be an after. In her book, American Women in World War II, historian Deanne Campbell notes that these letters became a vital part of the emotional economy of the war, sustaining relationships against the odds. But letters were a flawed medium. They were slow. A husband's letter, full of love and longing, might cross in the mail with his wife's letter, full of frustration and loneliness. This could create misunderstandings and hurt feelings. And then there was the censor. A censor's black pen would redact any information deemed sensitive, including, sometimes, passages that were considered too intimate or morally questionable. This invasion of privacy was a constant frustration. Bill's letter is a mix of romantic love and practical advice. He tells Peggy he loves her, but he also tells her to keep busy. He understood that her war was a war of waiting and worrying on the home front. He was trying to be a husband, to take care of her, even from a distance. He was fighting two wars, one for his country and one for his marriage. The worn photograph was a powerful symbol. It was a tangible piece of home, a physical reminder of what he was fighting for. Soldiers carried photos of their sweethearts and wives into battle. These images became talismans, objects of devotion. They were a connection to a life of peace and love in a world of violence and death. The questions that remain are deeply personal. How many couples found that the person they were writing to was not the same person who eventually came home? How did they bridge the gap between the idealized person in the letters and the real changed person who returned from the war? And for the relationships that did not survive, was the distance the only killer, or did the war simply reveal the cracks that were already there? Number 19. What does the enemy look like up close? He had been taught to hate them. They were the enemy. The Jerrys. They were faceless figures in propaganda posters, evil caricatures in films. They were the reason he was here, in this frozen forest in Belgium, thousands of miles from home. He had shot at them, and they had shot at him. He had seen his friends killed by them. Hate was a simple, useful emotion. Then he found the letter. It was on a dead German soldier. The soldier was young, maybe 18. His face was pale in the snow. Tucked inside his tunic was a letter written in a neat looping script. He couldn't read German, but he could see the photograph that was with it. A woman and a small child smiling. Later that night, huddled by a small fire, he asks a fellow soldier who speaks some German to translate. "My dearest Klaus, I pray this letter finds you well and warm. It is so cold here. Little Lena asks for her papa every day. I show her your picture and I tell you are a brave soldier and you will be home soon. She sends you a big kiss. We are managing. The rations are small, but we have enough. Your mother sends her love. Please, my love, be safe. Come home to us. You are my whole world. Yours forever, Gretchen." The soldier listening to the translation says nothing. The fire crackles. The forest is quiet. The enemy now has a name, Klaus. He had a wife named Gretchen and a daughter named Lena. He was not a monster, he was a man just like him. A man who was loved, who was missed, who wanted to go home. The simple, clean lines of hatred have become blurred and complicated. This experience, a common one for soldiers on all sides, is a powerful moment of shared humanity in the midst of inhumanity. The historian Stephen E. Ambrose, in his books like Band of Brothers, often recounts these moments when soldiers confront the humanity of their enemy. They would find letters, photos, and personal diaries on the bodies of the men they had just killed. These discoveries were unsettling. They made the act of killing more personal, more difficult. The war machine depends on dehumanization. It is easier to kill a Jerry or a Jap than it is to kill a man named Klaus who has a daughter. Propaganda on all sides worked to create this dehumanized image of the enemy. But the reality on the ground was often more complex. Soldiers would sometimes witness acts of kindness or chivalry from the other side. During the Battle of the Bulge, where this scene might have taken place, there were documented instances of unofficial, localized truces to allow both sides to collect their wounded. The letter from Gretchen is a universal document. If you change the names in the language, it could have been written by an American wife, a British wife, a Russian wife. The sentiments are the same fear for a loved one's safety, the struggles of life at home, the desperate hope for a reunion. It speaks to a fundamental human experience that transcends nationality and ideology. For the American soldier who found the letter, this was a profound and disturbing education. He was trained to be a killer, but his own humanity rebelled against it. He was forced to confront the fact that the man he had killed was not an abstract evil, but another victim of the same war. This realization didn't stop him from fighting. He had to fight to survive, to protect his friends. But it may have changed him. It may have planted a seed of sorrow and empathy in the hard soil of war. We are left with difficult questions. How many soldiers had similar experiences, and how did it affect them for the rest of their lives? Did this recognition of a shared humanity make it harder to fight, or did they have to suppress it to continue? And is it possible that the letters and photos found on the enemy did more to reveal the true tragedy of war than any history book ever could? Number 18, can you see a country change from 5,000 miles away? He lies on his bunk, reading a letter from his sister. It's not about family gossip or news from the neighborhood. It's about her new job. She is a welder. His sister, who used to work as a secretary, is now building ships. The letter is full of new words and new confidence. She talks about blueprints, rivet guns, and her union dues. She even sent a small smudged photo of herself in overalls and a bandana, a welding torch in her hand. She looks different, stronger. Dear Danny, you won't believe the noise in this shipyard. It's a 24-hour-a-day job. But I love it. I'm a real Rosie, the riveter, just like in the posters. It's tough work, but I feel like I'm doing something important. Like, I'm in the fight with you. Remember how Dad never wanted me to do anything more than type? Well, look at me now. I make more money than he ever did. The girls on my crew are the best. We all pull together. Don't worry about us here at home. We are all doing our part. You just focus on staying safe and coming back to us. But when you do, things might be a little different around here. Love, Betty. Danny reads the letter twice. He is proud of her, but he's also a little confused. The world he left behind is changing without him. The clear roles he grew up with, men went to work, women stayed home, are being redrawn. He is fighting a war to preserve his way of life, but that way of life is transforming while he is gone. World War II was a catalyst for immense social change in the United States, particularly for women. With millions of men serving overseas, a massive labor shortage occurred. The government and industry launched a powerful propaganda campaign to recruit women into the workforce, especially in defense industries. The iconic image of Rosie the Riveter symbolized this new economic power and independence for women. Between 1940 and 1945, the female labor force grew by over 6 million, a 57% increase. Women took on jobs that had previously been considered exclusively male. They worked in factories, shipyards, and aircraft plants. They learned new skills, earned their own money, and experienced a new sense of personal and professional autonomy. Historian Susan M. Hartman argues in The Home Front and Beyond that while many of these gains were temporary, the war permanently altered the landscape of gender roles in America. The letters that traveled between the front lines and the home front became a chronicle of this social revolution. Their soldiers, like Danny, received letters describing a home front that was increasingly unfamiliar. Their wives and sisters were not just waiting patiently, they were active participants in the war effort, taking on new responsibilities and discovering new capabilities. For many men, this was a source of pride. They were happy that their loved ones were contributing, but it could also be a source of anxiety. The traditional model of the male breadwinner was being challenged. Soldiers wondered what their place would be in this new world when they returned. Would there be jobs for them? Would their wives and girlfriends want to return to their pre-war roles? Betty's letter is a declaration of independence. Her line, "When you do Shuzay come back, things might be a little different around here," is both a promise and a warning. She is proud of her new life, and she is not sure if she wants to give it up. This quiet, personal transformation happening in millions of homes was one of the most significant and lasting consequences of the war. The soldier, isolated in a hyper-masculine military world, was often the last to know about the depth of these changes. He was frozen in the world of 1942, while the home front was racing towards 1945. The letters were his only window into this evolution. The questions that arise from these letters are profound. How did this shift in gender roles, communicated through the mail, affect the morale and psychology of soldiers at the front? Did the newfound independence of women at home create a new kind of emotional distance in their long-distance relationships? And how much of the social upheaval of the post-war decades can be traced back to these quiet revelations sent in smudged envelopes from a shipyard to a foxhole? Number 17, how much truth can you put in a letter? The censor is a man with a sharp knife and a black ink pot. He sits at a desk, a mountain of letters in front of him. His job is to read the private thoughts of other men. He is looking for secrets, the location of a unit, the date of a future operation, the number of casualties, any detail that might be of use to the enemy if the letter were to be intercepted. He is a guardian of military security, but he is also a guardian of morale. He has another unwritten job to protect the home front from the full horror of the war. So he cuts out more than just secrets. He cuts out the despair, the terror, the gruesome details. A young Marine, after a brutal battle on a Pacific island, tries to tell his father what it was really like. Dear Dad, we took the island, but the cost was high. I saw things I can't unsee. The noise was constant for days. Men were screaming. I lost 20 years ago BY Sensor from my platoon. The fighting was hand-to-hand in some places. The enemy is tougher than we thought. I don't feel like a hero. I just feel tired. I don't know how I made it through. Sometimes I think Shrews redacted BY Sensor. Please tell Mom I'm okay. Tell her I'm getting plenty to eat. Your son, Michael. When Michael's father receives the letter, it has holes in it. The black marks of the censor are like missing teeth in a smile. They are voids of information, but they are not empty. In a way, they say more than the words they conceal. The black ink screams of horror. The father knows that whatever was cut out was terrible. The censorship meant to protect him only feeds his anxiety. He is left to imagine the worst. The Office of Censorship was established in the United States just after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. At its peak, it employed over 14,000 people and was responsible for censoring all communications coming into and out of the country. Every single letter a soldier sent home was read by a censor. The rules were strict. Soldiers were forbidden from mentioning their location, troop movements, equipment, or casualties. They were also encouraged to maintain a cheerful and optimistic tone. This created a strange and difficult task for the soldier. He was living through the most intense and often traumatic experience of his life, but he was forbidden from writing about it honestly. He had to create a parallel narrative, a sanitized version of his life for home consumption. He would write about the weather, the food, a funny thing a friend said. He would omit the days of terror, the sight of a dead friend, the constant gnawing fear. As a result, soldiers developed a kind of code. They would use phrases that seemed innocuous but carried a deeper meaning for their families. Things are a little hot here could mean they were under heavy fire. I'll tell you all about it when I get home was a way of saying, I have seen things too terrible to write. The families learned to read between the lines, to find the truth in the silences. The censor's black marks became a part of the visual language of the war. They were a constant reminder of the distance, the danger, and the things that could not be said. In his book, The Greatest Generation, Tom Brokaw includes many letters that show these redactions, highlighting the frustration of both the writer and the reader. Michael's letter is a perfect example of this dilemma. He tries to be honest with his father, to share the burden of his experience. But the institution of war, in the form of the censor, steps in. It enforces a code of silence. It isolates the soldier in his trauma. He is told to tell his mother he is okay, and getting plenty to eat, a bland, reassuring lie that stands in stark contrast to the redacted horror he has just tried to describe. The questions that censorship leaves us with are chilling. By trying to protect the home front, did the censors actually inflict a different kind of psychological pain, the pain of uncertainty and imagination? How did this enforced silence affect the soldiers themselves, who were unable to unburden themselves to the people they trusted most? And how much of the true history of the war, the personal, visceral history, was lost forever to the censor's knife and black ink? Number 16, what is the sound of home? The fighting has stopped, for now, There is a strange, ringing silence. He sits in a bombed-out farmhouse in Italy. The air is cold. He can see his breath. A few weeks ago, a package arrived from home. It wasn't socks or candy. It was a set of small, fragile records. His family had gone to one of those booths in a train station and recorded their voices. He has a small, hand-cranked phonograph. He carefully puts one of the records on. He turns the crank. A hiss, a crackle, and then his mother's voice. "Hello, my darling son. It's your mother. We are all thinking of you every day. Your father is here. He wants to say hello." Then his father's gruff, warm voice. Then his little sister giggling as she tells him about her new puppy. The record is only a minute long. He plays it again and again. He closes his eyes. For a few minutes, he is not in a ruined farmhouse in a foreign country. He is in his living room. He is home. The sounds of his family are a shield against the silence and the cold. This experience was made possible by the technology of the time. Voice recording booths, often found in train stations or amusement parks, allowed people on the home front to record short audio messages on small 6-inch records. These voice-o-graph or record-o-gram discs could be mailed overseas. For a soldier, receiving one of these was like receiving a piece of life itself. Letters were wonderful, but they were silent. You had to imagine the voice of the writer. These records were different. They carried the actual audible presence of a loved one. The tone, the inflection, the hesitation, the laughter, all of it was there. It was a powerful, almost magical connection. The historian and author Studs Terkel, in his oral history of the war, The Good War, captured many stories of the importance of these small personal connections in maintaining a soldier's sanity. The sound of a familiar voice could be a powerful emotional anchor. The war was a disorienting experience. It stripped a soldier of his identity and his surroundings. Everything was new and dangerous. The sound of his mother's voice was a reminder of who he was, where he came from, and what he was fighting to return to. It was a link to a world of safety and love. These audio letters also captured a piece of the home front in a way that written letters could not. A soldier could hear the family dog barking in the background, a radio playing a popular song, the ambient sounds of his own home. It was an auditory snapshot of the world he had left behind. This was incredibly valuable for a man starved for any sensory connection to his past life. Of course, like written letters, these recordings could also be a source of pain. Hearing the voices of loved ones could intensify feelings of homesickness. And if a soldier was killed after receiving such a recording, it became a tragic artifact for his family, a final ghostly message from a life that was gone. The fragility of the records themselves, they could easily break in transit, was a metaphor for the fragile connections they were meant to sustain. The questions these voice recordings leave us with are about the nature of human connection. What is it about the sound of a voice that is so much more powerful than the written word? How did these small, fragile discs affect the emotional landscape of the war for those who received them? And in our modern world of instant video calls, have we lost the preciousness of a voice that has traveled thousands of miles and survived a war to reach our ears? At number 15, how do you mourn a friend when the war won't stop for grief? The letter is hard to write, his hands are shaking. The man who slept in the bunk next to him, the man he shared his sea rations with, the man who showed him a picture of his girl back home just last week is gone. He was there 1 minute, and the next he was not. There was no ceremony, there was no time to grieve. The platoon had to keep moving. He feels he owes it to his friend's family to write to them. But what can he say? Dear Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I am writing to you because I was a friend of your son David. We were in the same platoon. I don't know what the army told you, but I wanted you to know that he was not alone. I was with him. It was very quick. He was a brave man, the bravest I ever knew. He was a good friend. He talked about you all the time. He loved you very much. He was always talking about going home and helping his dad on the farm. We are all going to miss him. I am so sorry for your loss. Sincerely, PFC Robert Miller. Every word is a lie and every word is the truth. It was not quick. David was not brave in the end. He was scared, just like they all were. But he was a good friend. He did talk about his family, and Robert is truly deeply sorry. The letter is a small, inadequate monument to a lost life. It is the only thing he can offer. Writing condolence letters was a grim and frequent duty for soldiers. When a man was killed, the official notification came from the War Department, a sterile and impersonal telegram. But often a friend or an officer from the man's unit would write a personal letter to the family. These letters were an attempt to provide some comfort, to give the family a sense of how their son had lived and died. The historian James Carl Nelson, in his book Five Lieutenants, details the heavy burden this placed on junior officers, who often had to write dozens of these letters after a major engagement. They followed a kind of unofficial formula. The letter had to be comforting but not dishonest. It should praise the fallen soldier's courage and character. It should reassure the family that he did not suffer. This last part was often a merciful lie, a fabrication intended to ease the family's pain. The act of writing these letters was a form of processing grief for the soldier as well. In the chaos of combat, there is no time for mourning. The need for survival pushes all other emotions aside. But in the quiet moment of writing a letter, a soldier like Robert could finally confront his loss. The letter was a way of honoring his friend's memory and acknowledging the reality of his death. These condolence letters are some of the most moving documents to come out of the war. They are filled with a raw, unadorned humanity. They are a conversation between strangers, united by a shared loss. A young man in the middle of a war takes the time to try and comfort a family he has never met. It is an act of profound empathy. But these letters also carried a heavy weight. For the family, they were a precious final connection to their son. They would be read and reread, treasured for a lifetime. For the writer, they were a reminder of his own mortality. With every letter he wrote, he knew that the next one could be about him. The questions that surround these letters are about the rituals of death and memory. In a war that killed millions, how did these small, personal acts of remembrance help people to cope? Did the merciful lies about a quick and painless death truly help families, or did they prevent them from understanding the reality of their son's sacrifice? And what was the long-term psychological cost to the soldiers who had to write these letters, who became the unwilling messengers of death? Number 14 is a joke, a weapon. The mud is everywhere. It is in his boots, in his food, on his face. It has been raining for a month. Morale is low. The men are tired, cold, and miserable. They are fighting a war of attrition, not just against the enemy, but against the weather and their own despair. In the middle of this misery, a soldier receives a letter from his wisecracking older brother. It's not full of patriotic slogans or worried questions. It's full of jokes, bad jokes. Dear little brother, heard you sing a lot of Europe. Hope you're writing it all down. Remember to visit the famous mud pits of France. I hear they're lovely this time of year. Things here are okay. Dad is still trying to fix that old car. Yesterday he had so much grease on him, Mom tried to cook a chicken on his forehead. Speaking of Mom, she's on a rationing kick. She says she's making a victory stew. It has potatoes, carrots, and the mailman's left shoe in it. Tastes like defeat. Stay safe, you lug, and try not to slip in the mud. We need you home to help Dad with that car. He's using a hammer to fix the radio now. Your brother, Mike. The soldier reads the letter, and for the first time in weeks, he laughs. A real deep laugh. The other men in his foxhole look at him. He reads the letter out loud. Soon they are all laughing. The mud is still there. The war is still there. But for a moment, it feels a little less heavy. The joke from home was a dose of medicine. Humor was a vital survival tool in World War II. It was a weapon against fear, a defense against despair, and a way to build bonds between men in an impossible situation. The soldiers' humor was often dark and cynical, what they called gallows humor. They made jokes about the terrible food, the incompetent officers, the constant danger. It was a way of controlling their fear by mocking it. The cartoonist Bill Mauldin became famous for his Willie and Joe cartoons in the military newspaper Stars and Stripes. Willie and Joe were two grizzled, exhausted, and perpetually unimpressed infantrymen. They were always covered in mud, unshaven, and complaining. In one famous cartoon, they are looking at a beautiful mountain vista, and one says to the other, "A lovely view. Is there one for the enlisted men?" Mauldin's cartoons were wildly popular with the troops because they captured the cynical, humorous, and deeply anti-authoritarian spirit of the common soldier. They reflected the truth of their lives. Letters from home that contained humor were particularly valuable. They were a reminder of a world where people laughed, a world beyond the grim reality of the war. A joke from a brother, a funny story about a neighbor, these were connections to normalcy. They showed the soldier that life at home was continuing, with all its small absurdities. This use of humor was not frivolous. It was a recognized part of maintaining morale. The USO United Service Organizations sent comedians like Bob Hope to entertain troops all over the world. These shows were a huge boost to morale. They provided a temporary escape, a moment of shared laughter in a place that had very little of it. Mike's letter is a perfect example of this kind of morale-boosting humor. He doesn't ignore the brothers' reality. He mentions the mud, but he frames it in a funny way. He uses self-deprecating family humor to create a sense of shared intimacy and normalcy. The image of their father trying to fix a radio with a hammer is a small, perfect piece of home. It's a joke that says, "We are still your crazy family, and we are waiting for you." The questions humor in wartime raises are fascinating. Is there a point where gallows humor stops being a coping mechanism and becomes a sign of psychological damage? How did the military officially and unofficially recognize the importance of humor in keeping an army functional? And how many soldiers' lives were, in a very real sense, saved not by a weapon or a medic, but by a well-timed, stupid joke from home? Number 13, how do you tell your children about a war? The soldier has a daughter he has never met. She was born 3 months after he shipped out. He has a photograph of her, a tiny baby wrapped in a blanket. He looks at it every day. He is a father, but he has never held his child. He sits down to write to her, a letter she won't be able to read for years. To my darling daughter, Susan, you don't know me yet, but I am your daddy. By the time you read this, you will be a big girl. I hope you are a good girl, and you are listening to your mother. I am very far away, in a place called Germany. It is a long story, and one day, when I am home, I will tell you all about it. I am here with a lot of other daddies, and we are working very hard to make the world a safe place for little girls like you to grow up in. I have a picture of you, and I look at it all the time. You are the most beautiful baby in the world. I can't wait to come home and hold you. I can't wait to hear you say, "Daddy, be good for your mommy." All my love, Daddy. This letter is an act of faith. It is a message sent into the future, addressed to a person who does not yet exist in any meaningful way for him. It is a father's attempt to create a bond with his child across a gulf of time and space. He is trying to be a parent through the mail. Millions of soldiers in World War II were fathers. Many of them had to leave behind young children, or, like the writer of this letter, left before their children were even born. This separation was a unique kind of pain. These men were missing the most important moments of their children's lives, the first step, the first word, the first birthday. Writing to their children was a way to combat this erasure of their fatherhood. They would send letters, drawings, and small gifts. They would try to explain their absence in simple, age-appropriate terms. They were helping Uncle Sam or fighting the bad guys. They were trying to build a narrative for their children that was heroic and understandable, not frightening. The historian Judy Barrett Leadoff has created a project called "Since You Went Away: World War II Letters from American Women on the Home Front." While her focus is on women, the collection reveals the other side of this correspondence, the letters from mothers trying to keep their husbands present in their children's lives. They would write about what the child did that day, trace the child's hand on a piece of paper, and help the child write a letter to their daddy. The letter to Susan is a masterpiece of paternal love and simplification. The war is reduced to working hard to make the world a safe place. This is not a lie. It is a fairy tale, a necessary one for a child. He is creating his own legacy, defining himself for his daughter as a protector. He is asserting his identity as daddy, a role he has only been able to perform from a distance. These letters are also filled with a deep sense of longing and a fear of being forgotten. The soldier wants his daughter to know him. He is afraid that when he returns, he will be a stranger to her. The letter is a claim on her memory, an attempt to plant himself in her life before he can be there in person. The questions that remain about these letters are deeply poignant. How did these long-distance attempts at parenting shape the post-war generation of children? For the children who were old enough to remember, what was the emotional impact of having a father who was just a voice in a letter and a face in a photograph? And for the fathers who never returned, how did these final letters shape their children's understanding of a man they would never know? Number 12, can you taste the memory? He is eating his dinner. It is a can of something cold and greasy that the army calls pork and beans. He eats it with a metal spoon, sitting on the ground. He has been eating this, or some version of it, for months. It is fuel, not food. That afternoon, he got a letter from his wife. It wasn't about the war or her worries. It was about food. My dearest John, I was in the kitchen all day today. I was thinking of you, so I decided to make all your favorites. So I got some real butter from Mrs. Gable down the street. Don't ask what I had to trade for it. And I made you a big stack of pancakes, just the way you like them, with crispy edges. Then, for dinner, I made your mom's recipe for pot roast with lots of carrots and onions. The whole house smells like it. I know you can't eat it, but I wanted you to know I was making it. I'm pretending you're sitting right here at the table, about to take the first bite. I miss cooking for you. I miss you. All my love, Helen. John reads the letter, and he can almost taste the pancakes. He can smell the pot roast. The memory is so powerful. It is a physical sensation. His cold, greasy beans taste a little bit worse, but his heart feels a little bit warmer. His wife has sent him a meal made of words. Food was a central theme in the letters of World War II. For the soldiers, it was a constant source of complaint. The infamous K rations and C rations were monotonous, unappetizing, and a symbol of the impersonality of military life. Soldiers dreamed of real food, of home-cooked meals. A letter describing a favorite dish was a common and powerful form of communication. On the home front, food was also a central issue. The government implemented a strict rationing system to ensure that there were enough resources for the war effort. The civilians were issued ration books with stamps for things like sugar, coffee, meat, and butter. This meant that cooking a special meal like the one Helen describes required planning, saving, and sometimes creative bartering. Her line about the butter is not just a casual comment, it's a testament to her effort and her love. The historian Lizzie Callingham, in her book The Taste of War, explores how food and the control of food supplies were critical to the outcome of the conflict. But on a personal level, food was about memory and identity. The pot roast is not just a meal, it is your mom's recipe. It is a connection to family, to tradition, to a specific time and place. Helen's letter is an act of vicarious hospitality. She cannot feed her husband, but she can give him the experience of being fed. She can evoke the sensory details of a meal, the smells and tastes of home. This was a way of nurturing him, of caring for him, from thousands of miles away. It was a deeply intimate act. She is not just listing ingredients, she is creating a scene, a memory that they both share, and placing him inside it. These food letters were a powerful morale booster. They were a reminder of what was waiting for them back home. They were a promise of a future where food would be for pleasure, not just for survival. A soldier could endure another day of sea rations if he could hold on to the memory of his wife's pancakes. But like all communication during the war, these letters could also be a source of pain. The contrast between the described meal and the soldier's reality could be stark and depressing. It could intensify his feelings of deprivation and homesickness. It was a beautiful, painful dream of a world he could not reach. The questions that linger are about the power of our senses. How does a simple description of food evoke such a powerful emotional and physical response? In a state of constant stress and deprivation, did these sensory memories become even more vivid and important? And how many soldiers were sustained through the darkest days of the war by the simple, powerful taste of a memory? Number 11, who were you before the uniform? He is on leave in a city he has never seen before, Paris. It is beautiful, but he feels out of place. He is a soldier in a soldier's uniform. People look at him as a liberator, an American GI. They don't see the boy from a small town in Oregon who used to work in a lumber mill. He feels like he is playing a role. He writes a letter to his best friend back home, the one he used to go fishing with. Dear Mark, Paris is amazing. We got a 3-day pass. It's everything they say it is. The buildings are old and beautiful. The French people have been great to us, but it's strange. I walk around in this uniform and everyone sees a soldier. They have no idea who I am. Remember that summer we spent building the treehouse by the creek? And how we almost got swept away when the river flooded? That I was thinking about that today. It feels like a different lifetime, like a different person lived it. Sometimes I worry that I'll forget how to be that person, the guy who knew how to chop wood and catch a trout. All I know how to do now is clean a rifle and dig a foxhole. I hope that other guy is still in here somewhere. Jim, this letter is about a crisis of identity. The war strips a young man of his individuality. It replaces his name with a rank and a number. It replaces his clothes with a uniform. It replaces his civilian skills with military ones. Jim's fear is that this transformation is permanent. He is afraid that the soldier has erased the boy. The experience of being a soldier is an all-consuming one. It is a 24-hour-a-day job with no weekends off. The military environment is a total institution, a term coined by sociologist Irving Goffman, which describes a place where every aspect of an individual's life is controlled and regulated. This can lead to a process of depersonalization, where the individual's old identity begins to fade. Jim's letter is a conscious effort to fight this process. He is reaching out to his friend, his link to his pre-war self. He asks for stupid stories, because those stories are the building blocks of his identity. The memory of the treehouse is not just a nostalgic anecdote, it is evidence that he was once someone else, someone who built things instead of destroying them, someone who was defined by his friendships, not his rank. The historian Peter S. Kinsvater, in his book American Soldiers' Ground-Level Views of the European Theater of Operations, discusses the psychological challenges soldiers faced in maintaining their sense of self. They were far from home, surrounded by strangers, and engaged in an activity that was antithetical to everything they had been taught. Letters home were a crucial way to reinforce their civilian identities. When Jim says, "I hope that other guy is still in here somewhere," he is expressing a common and profound fear among soldiers. Would they be able to shed the uniform, both literally and figuratively, when the war was over? Would they be able to go back to their old lives, their old selves? Would the war leave an indelible mark, changing them forever? This was not just a personal anxiety, it was a societal one. There was a great deal of concern on the home front about how these millions of returning soldiers who had been trained in violence would readjust to civilian life. Magazines and government pamphlets were full of advice on how to treat the returning veteran. Jim's plea to his friend is a plea for help in the act of remembering. He needs his friend to be a mirror, to reflect back to him the image of the person he used to be, the person he hopes he can be again. The questions this leaves us with are about the nature of identity. How much of who we are is defined by our circumstances? Can a person's core identity survive an experience as transformative and traumatic as war? And for the soldiers who came home, how long did it take for the other guy to reemerge? And did he ever fully come back? Number, what does victory look like from a foxhole? The beach was chaos, smoke, fire, the screams of men. He had made it across the sand, over the seawall. He is now in a ditch, somewhere in Normandy, France. It is a few days after D-Day. They have taken the beach, but the fighting has not stopped. It has just moved inland. There is no sense of triumph. There is only exhaustion and fear, and the knowledge that they have to get up and do it all again tomorrow. He finds a crumpled piece of paper and a pencil stub, and writes to his wife. "Dearest Mary, we are in France. I am okay. It was bad, Mary. It was very bad. But I am okay. I can't tell you much. But we are here. Don't believe what you read in the papers. This is not glorious. It is just hard, dirty work. We lost a lot of good men, and I think of them. I am very tired, but I am okay. Don't worry. I will write again when I can. I love you more than anything." On my left, David, this is a letter from the heart of a history-making event. The D-Day landings on June 6, 1944, were the largest amphibious invasion in history. Over 156,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy. It was the beginning of the end of the war in Europe. For the historians, it is a turning point, a day of victory. But for David, a soldier on the ground, it does not feel like victory. It feels like survival. His letter is short, stark, and drained of all emotion except for a desperate attempt to reassure his wife. The sentences are clipped. "I am okay. It was bad." He is a man who has seen too much and has no words to describe it. The historian Cornelius Ryan, in his definitive book on D-Day, The Longest Day, compiled the accounts of hundreds of participants. The overwhelming impression from these personal accounts is not of heroism or glory, but of confusion, terror, and incredible luck. The difference between living and dying was often a matter of a few inches. David's warning, "Don't believe what you read in the papers," is a common sentiment in soldiers' letters. The news reports at home, often filtered through military censors and driven by the need to maintain public morale, presented a very different picture of the war. They spoke of grand strategies, of advances and victories. They rarely captured the brutal, terrifying reality of combat for the individual soldier. The letter reveals the profound disconnect between the big picture of the war and the ground-level experience. For the generals, D-Day was about securing a beachhead. For David, it was about not getting killed in the next 5 minutes. His world had shrunk to the size of his ditch. His concerns were not about the liberation of Europe, but about his friends who were gone and his own survival. The repetition of "I am okay" is telling. He is trying to convince his wife, but he's also trying to convince himself. He has just been through a meat grinder. He has witnessed things that will haunt him for the rest of his life. To say "I am okay" is an act of will, a refusal to be broken by what he has seen. The letter is a historical document, but not in the traditional sense. It does not describe troop movements or strategic objectives. It describes the human cost of victory. It reminds us that history is not an abstract story of dates and battles. It is the collective experience of millions of individuals like David, huddled in a ditch, trying to find the words to tell the people they love that they are, for one more day, alive. The questions that arise from a letter like this are fundamental to our understanding of war. How does a soldier reconcile the official, heroic narrative of a battle with his own traumatic experience of it? What is the long-term psychological impact of surviving a day like D-Day, of seeing so much death and destruction? And when we celebrate great victories, do we risk forgetting the terrible human price that is paid by the people in the foxholes? Number 9, can you fight a war and still believe in God? He is a medic. His job is not to take lives, but to save them. He works in a field hospital, a large tent just behind the front lines, when the wounded come in day and night. He sees the real cost of the war written on the bodies of young men. He is a man of faith. He has always believed in a just and merciful God. But here, in this tent of suffering, his faith is being tested every minute. He writes to his father, who is a minister back home. "Dear Father, I hope this letter finds you well. My work here continues. We are very busy. I am doing the best I can. I must confess to you that I am struggling. I see so much pain. Boys, not even men, with terrible wounds. I patch them up and we send them back. Or we send them home, or they die on my table. I don't understand the reason for it. You always taught me that God has a plan, that there is goodness in the world. I try to hold on to that. I pray every night, but it is hard. It is very hard to see God's plan in this place. Where is he in all this suffering? I am not losing my faith, but I am questioning. I have to believe there is a reason. I have to. Your son Thomas, this is a letter of profound spiritual crisis. Thomas is confronting the age-old theological problem of evil. How can a good and all-powerful God allow such immense suffering? This is not an abstract philosophical question for him. It is a daily, bloody reality. Religion was an important part of life for many soldiers in World War II. Chaplains served on the front lines, providing comfort, conducting services, and ministering to the dying. Many soldiers carried Bibles or prayer books with them. In the face of death, faith could be a powerful source of solace and courage. The famous phrase, "There are no atheists in foxholes," reflects this reality. However, the war could also shatter a person's faith. The sheer scale of the death and destruction, the random cruelty of combat, could make it impossible for some to continue believing in a benevolent deity. They had witnessed a world that seemed to be without order, without mercy, without God. Thomas's letter is a window into this struggle. He is caught between the faith he was raised with and the brutal reality he is witnessing. He is not rejecting God, he is wrestling with him. His letter is a kind of prayer, an honest cry of doubt and confusion addressed to his earthly father, his spiritual guide. The historian Edward J. Bloom, in his book, The Color of Christ, explores the role of religious imagery and belief in American history, including in times of war. For many, the war was framed as a righteous crusade against evil, a Christian war. But for the soldiers on the ground, this clear moral framework could dissolve in the face of indiscriminate suffering. Thomas's work as a medic gives him a unique perspective. He is not a combatant. His role is to heal. He is dedicated to preserving life in a place dedicated to destroying it. This makes the contradiction even more stark for him. He is trying to do God's work, but he is surrounded by what seems to be the devil's work. His final lines, "I have to believe there is a reason, I have to," are not a statement of faith, but a statement of necessity. He needs to believe, because the alternative, like that all this suffering is meaningless, is too horrible to contemplate. Faith, for him, has become a psychological survival strategy. The questions this letter raises are among the deepest we can ask. How did the experience of war permanently alter the religious landscape of an entire generation? How many soldiers, like Thomas, returned home with a faith that was more complicated, more questioned, and perhaps more mature? And for those who did lose their faith, what did they find to replace it in the silence that God had left behind? Number 8, what does a liberated city smell like? The city is Paris. For 4 years, it had been under occupation. Now, it is free. He is one of the American soldiers who rolls into the city in the late summer of 1944. The crowds are ecstatic. People are cheering, crying, singing. They are throwing flowers. Women are kissing them. The joy is a physical thing, a wave that washes over him. He is overwhelmed. He is just a kid from Ohio. You will not believe where I am. I am in Paris. We came into the city today, and it was the most amazing thing I have ever seen. The whole city was out in the streets. People were going crazy. They were cheering for us, waving French and American flags. I can't describe the feeling. These people have been living under the enemy for 4 years, and now they are free. You can see it in their faces. It's like they can breathe again. An old man came up to me with tears in his eyes and just shook my hand. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I always wonder what we were really fighting for. Today I know. It was for this moment. To see these people happy and free, it makes everything we've been through worth it. Don't worry about me. I have never been better. Your son, Frank. This letter is a rare moment of pure, uncomplicated joy in a war that was mostly filled with misery. It is a snapshot of liberation. For a brief moment, the soldier is not a fighter, but a hero. He is the physical embodiment of freedom. The liberation of Paris in August 1944 was a hugely symbolic moment in the war. It was a clear sign that the tide had turned, that the end was in sight. For the soldiers who participated, it was an experience they would never forget. It was a powerful affirmation of the rightness of their cause. The historian Antony Beevor describes the scene in his book, D-Day, the Battle for Normandy. The liberation was a chaotic, joyful, and sometimes violent affair. While the American soldiers were being feted, French citizens were taking revenge on collaborators. It was a city exploding with 4 years of pent-up emotion. Frank's letter captures the idealistic side of this moment. He has been through the brutal fighting in Normandy. He has seen his friends die. He has lived in filth and fear. Now, for the first time, he is seeing the positive result of his sacrifice. The abstract concept of fighting for freedom has become a concrete reality. He can see it in the face of the old man who shakes his hand. This experience was a powerful antidote to the cynicism and exhaustion that combat inevitably produces. It refueled the soldiers' morale. It reminded them that they were not just fighting against something, they were fighting for something. Frank's line, "Today, I know, is a moment of profound moral clarity. However, these moments of celebration were often fleeting." The war was not over. After a few days of rest and celebration in Paris, Frank and his unit would be back on the front lines, pushing east towards Germany, where some of the fiercest fighting of the war still lay ahead. The joyous memory of liberation would have to sustain them through the difficult months to come. The letter is also a perfect piece of communication for the home front. It is a good news story. It confirms for his parents that his sacrifice is meaningful. It is a letter they could proudly show to their neighbors. It contains none of the horror or ambiguity of his previous letters from the front. It is a simple, happy story. The questions that remain are about the nature of memory and motivation. How important were these moments of positive reinforcement, like the liberation of Paris, in sustaining a soldier's will to fight? Did the memory of this joy help them to endure the subsequent horrors, or did it make the return to combat even more difficult? And for the French people who celebrated their liberation, how did their relationship with their American liberators evolve in the years after the war was over? Number 7, can you die of a broken heart? She works in a government office in Washington, D.C. Her job is to sort through the personal effects of soldiers who have been killed in action. It is a quiet, somber, and soul-crushing job. Boxes arrive every day, filled with the last remnants of a young man's life, a wallet, a watch, a few photographs, and a stack of letters. Her job is to catalog these items and send them home to the next of kin. She must be detached. She must be professional. But sometimes a letter catches her eye. She knows she shouldn't, but she reads it. It is a letter from a young woman to her sweetheart, a soldier. "My dearest Bobby, I miss you so much it hurts. The days are so long without you. I walk past the park where we had our first picnic, and I have to look away. I listen to our song on the radio, and I start to cry. Please be safe, my love. Please come home. I don't know what I would do without you. You are my everything. I am counting the minutes until I am in your arms again. I love you more than words can say. Forever yours, Susan. The woman in the office folds the letter carefully. She knows that this letter was found on the body of the soldier, Bobby. He will never come home. Susan will never be in his arms again. The woman looks at the return address. She knows that in a few weeks, a box containing this letter will arrive at Susan's house. Susan will read her own words, her own promises of a future that will never happen. The letter has been transformed from a message of love into an artifact of grief. This scene describes the work of the Army Effects Bureau, the organization responsible for processing the personal belongings of the deceased. It was a massive and heartbreaking logistical operation. Every item had to be accounted for. These boxes of personal effects were the last physical connection a family had with their lost son, husband, or father. The letters found on soldiers were particularly poignant. They were a snapshot of the love and hope that had sustained the soldier. They were a testament to the life he had lived and the future he had been fighting for. For the family, receiving these letters back could be both a comfort and a source of immense pain. The historian Carol Felsenthal, in her biography of Katharine Graham, describes how Graham's husband, Philip Graham, suffered from what we now call PTSD after the war. The emotional wounds were often deeper and longer lasting than the physical ones. For the loved ones at home, the arrival of a death notice was the beginning of a lifetime of grief. The young woman Susan, whose letter is at the center of this story, is a representative of the millions of women who lost their sweethearts and husbands in the war. Their grief was a private war fought on the home front. They had to navigate a world that was celebrating victory, while they were mourning a devastating personal loss. The phrase Gold Star Mother or Gold Star Wife was used to denote the families of fallen servicemen, a symbol of their sacrifice. The clerk in the Effects Bureau is a witness to this vast, silent tragedy. She is a gatekeeper of memory. Her job forces her to confront the human cost of the war on a daily basis. She is not on the front lines, but she is on the front lines of grief. Her quiet, bureaucratic work is one of the most emotionally devastating jobs of the war. The questions that linger from this are almost too painful to ask. What was it like for a young woman like Susan to receive that box, to hold the letters she had written, full of a future that was now impossible? How many of these women ever recovered from such a loss, and what was the psychological toll on the people who worked in places like the Army Effects Bureau, who had to handle the intimate, tragic remnants of so many lost lives? Number 6, what does it feel like to be erased? He is a pilot in the U.S. Army Air Forces flying a bomber over Europe, but he is not like the other pilots. He is African American. He flies from a segregated airbase. He sleeps in a segregated barracks. He eats in a segregated mess hall. He is fighting for a country that treats him as a second-class citizen. His squadron is one of the best. They have a reputation for excellence, for never losing a bomber they were assigned to protect. They are the Tuskegee Airmen. The flying is hard, but we are good at it. We have to be. We have to be better than everyone else just to be considered equal. The white bomber crews, they didn't trust us at first. They called us names, but now they see what we can do. Now, when they see our red tails on their wing, they are happy. They know we'll get them home. But it's a strange feeling. Up there, in the sky, you are just a pilot. You are judged by your skill, but as soon as you land, you are a black man again. You have to use a separate door, a separate latrine. We are fighting for a freedom that we don't have ourselves. Don't tell mom and dad any of this. It would only worry them. Tell them I am proud to serve, because I am. I am proud of what we are doing. I just hope that when this is all over, our country will be proud of us too. I hope things will change. Your brother Charles, this letter is about the deep and painful contradiction at the heart of the American experience in World War II. The country was fighting a war against tyranny and racial supremacy abroad, while practicing racial segregation and discrimination at home. This was the Double V campaign, a concept championed by African American newspapers' victory against the enemy overseas and victory against racism at home. The Tuskegee Airmen, the first African American military aviators in the U.S. Armed Forces, are a powerful symbol of this struggle. They were trained at a separate facility in Tuskegee, Alabama. They faced constant racism and skepticism from the military establishment. But their combat record was exemplary. They flew over 1,500 missions and earned the respect of the bomber crews they protected. Their story is documented in numerous books, such as Red Tail, Black Wings by John B. Holway. Charles's letter captures the complex emotions of these soldiers. He is proud of his skill and his contribution to the war effort. He feels a sense of equality and respect in the air, in the pure meritocracy of combat. But he is also deeply aware of the injustice he faces on the ground. He is fighting for the four freedoms that President Roosevelt spoke of, but he does not enjoy them himself. The letter is also an act of protection. He tells his brother not to share the full extent of the racism with his parents. This is a common theme in soldiers' letters. They try to shield their families from the worst parts of their experience. But in this case, he is shielding them from a pain that they already know all too well from their lives back in America. His hope that things will change was a powerful motivator for many African American soldiers. They believed that by proving their patriotism and courage on the battlefield, they could challenge the system of segregation back home. The war did become a catalyst for the modern civil rights movement. The experiences of soldiers like Charles and the hypocrisy they exposed helped to fuel the demand for change in the post-war years. But at the time of writing, this change was just a hope. Charles is living in a state of cognitive dissonance. He is a hero and a second-class citizen at the same time. His uniform is a symbol of both his service and his segregation. The questions that remain are vital to understanding American history. How did the military, an institution that was officially segregated, function effectively during the war? What was the psychological impact on African American soldiers who were fighting for a country that denied them their basic rights? And to what extent did their wartime service truly contribute to the eventual dismantling of segregation, a battle that would take another 20 years to win? Number 5, how do you describe the unspeakable? He is a young infantryman, barely 20 years old. He has seen combat. He has seen death. He thought he had seen the worst that war had to offer. He was wrong. His unit has just helped to liberate a concentration camp. It is not a military target. It is a place of systematic, industrial scale human suffering. The sight, the smell, the sounds of the place are beyond anything he could have imagined. He is in a state of shock. He sits down, his hands trembling, and tries to write a letter to his older sister. He feels a desperate need to bear witness, to tell someone what he has seen. Dear Sarah, I don't know how to write this. I don't have the words. Today we came to a place, it was a camp. There were people there, if you can call them that. There were skeletons, just skin and bones. They could barely walk. There were piles of bodies, piles of them like firewood. The smell, Sarah, I will never forget that smell as long as I live. It's in my clothes, in my skin. We are giving them our food, but some of them are too sick to eat. They just look at us with these huge, empty eyes. What kind of people could do this to other people? What kind of monsters are we fighting? I used to think this war was about territory and politics. Now I know it's about good and evil, pure evil. I saw it today. Please don't tell Mom the details. Just tell her I know why I'm here now. I know what this is all about. Love, Paul. This letter is a raw, unfiltered account of one of the darkest chapters in human history. As Allied forces pushed into Germany in the spring of 1945, they began to discover the network of concentration and extermination camps. The liberation of camps like Buchenwald, Dachau, and Bergen-Belsen by American and British troops revealed the full extent of the atrocities committed by the German regime. The soldiers who were the first to enter these camps were completely unprepared for what they found. General Eisenhower, upon visiting one of the camps, made the famous decision to force German civilians from nearby towns to tour the camp, and he ordered that every detail be photographed and documented so that no one could ever deny what had happened there. Paul's letter is his own unofficial documentation. It is a primary source document of horror. His language breaks down as he tries to describe the indescribable. I don't have the words. People, if you can call them that, he is struggling to find a frame of reference for something that is outside of all normal human experience. The letter marks a profound shift in his understanding of the war. It is no longer an abstract conflict. It has become a moral crusade. He has seen the face of pure evil, and it has given him a terrible clarity of purpose. This experience was common among the liberating soldiers. It erased any lingering doubts about the necessity of the war. The psychological impact on these soldiers was immense and lifelong. Many of them suffered from what we would now call severe PTSD. They were haunted by the images, the sounds, and especially the smell of the camps. Many of them never spoke of what they had seen, not even to their families. It was a memory too terrible to share, Paul's instruction to his sister, "Please don't tell mom the details," is a heartbreaking attempt to protect his family from the knowledge that is now tormenting him. He is shouldering the burden of this horror alone. He wants his mother to understand the moral certainty of his cause, but not the hellish reality that produced it. The questions that arise from this letter are among the most difficult we face as a species. How is it possible for human beings to commit such systematic acts of cruelty? What is the responsibility of a witness to such horror? And how can a society or an individual recover from the knowledge that such evil exists in the world? Number 4. Does a hero want to be called a hero? The war in Europe is over. VE Day. The ticker tape parades are happening back home. He is still in Germany, part of the occupying force. He gets letters from his family full of pride. They call him a hero. His little brother wants to know how many bad guys he killed. The local newspaper wants to do an interview with him when he gets home. He is part of the greatest generation. He sits down to write to his father. The letter is not what his father expects. "Dear Dad, I got your letter. Thank you for the kind words, but please stop calling me a hero. I'm not a hero. The heroes are the ones who aren't coming home. They are the ones buried in the fields all over this country. I was just one of the lucky ones who didn't get killed. I didn't do anything special. I was scared all the time. I just did what I was told. I tried to stay alive and keep my buddies alive. That's all. When I get home, I don't want to talk about the war. I don't want to tell stories. I just want to forget. I want to get a job, get married, and live a quiet life. I want to feel normal again. I know you are proud of me, and that means the world." But you are proud of a person who doesn't exist. The person who is coming home is different from the boy who left. I hope you can understand that. Your son, Robert, this letter is about the heavy and often unwanted mantle of heroism. The narrative of the returning hero is a powerful and necessary one for a society. It helps to make sense of the war's sacrifice. It turns the chaos of combat into a story of triumph and valor, but for many of the soldiers themselves, this narrative felt false. The writer and veteran Paul Fussell, in his seminal book Wartime, dissects the romanticized language we use to talk about war. He argues that the reality of war is so brutal and absurd that it defies heroic language. Words like glory, honor, and sacrifice ring hollow to a man who has lived in a muddy foxhole and seen his friends blown to pieces. Robert's letter is a rejection of this heroic narrative. He is uncomfortable with the label of hero because it doesn't match his own experience. His war was not about courage, it was about fear and luck. He doesn't feel like a victor, he feels like a survivor. The real heroes in his view are the dead, because they made the ultimate sacrifice. This was a very common sentiment among combat veterans. The letter also speaks to the profound sense of alienation that many soldiers felt. The person who is coming home is different. He has been changed by his experiences in ways that his family cannot understand. There is a gulf between his reality and their perception of him. They see a hero, he sees a man who is haunted by what he has seen and done. His desire for a quiet life was the dream of millions of returning GIs. After years of chaos, violence, and constant adrenaline, the idea of normalcy, a steady job, a family, a house in the suburbs away, was incredibly appealing. This desire fueled the post-war economic boom and the baby boom. They were a generation that had seen too much history and wanted nothing more than to live a simple, private life. Robert's plea, I hope you can understand that, is a plea for acceptance. He is worried that his family will be disappointed in him when they discover he is not the hero of their imagination. He is trying to prepare them for the quiet, withdrawn, and perhaps damaged man who will be returning. The questions this letter leaves us with are about the aftermath of war. How does a society welcome back its soldiers without imposing a false narrative of heroism on them? What is the psychological cost to a veteran who feels he cannot live up to the public's expectations? And is the silence of so many veterans about their wartime experiences not a sign of modesty, but a sign of a trauma so deep that it can never be spoken? Number 3 is coming home more frightening than staying. The war is over. He has enough points to go home. He should be happy. He is. But he is also terrified. For 3 years, the army has been his whole life. It told him when to wake up, when to eat, what to wear, and where to go. His best friends, his brothers, are the men in his unit. They have been through hell together. Now they're all scattering. He is going home to a world he barely remembers, to a family he knows only through letters. He writes one last letter from Europe to his wife. My dearest Betty, it's official. I'm coming home. I should be on a ship in the next few weeks. I can't believe it's finally over. I dream about seeing you every night. But Betty, I'm scared. Isn't that a stupid thing to say? I survived all this, and now I'm scared of coming home. It's just everything will be different. I'm different. You're different. The world is different. What if I don't fit in anymore? What if I can't sleep in a real bed because it's too quiet? What if I don't know what to talk about with people? All my stories are from over here, and nobody will want to hear them. I just want to be the man you married. I'm worried he's gone, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try so hard. Just be patient with me. I love you. See you soon, your husband George. This letter captures a little understood emotion of war, the fear of coming home. The end of the war was not a simple, happy ending for many soldiers. It was the beginning of a new and daunting challenge, the challenge of becoming a civilian again. The military life, for all its hardships, provides a powerful sense of structure, purpose, and camaraderie. The soldiers live in a tightly knit community where everyone shares the same experiences and understands the same unspoken language. The bond between soldiers who have faced combat together is one of the strongest bonds in human experience. Leaving that community can feel like a kind of death. George's fears are very specific and very common among returning veterans. He worries about his identity. What if I don't fit in? He worries about the psychological scars of war. What if I can't sleep? He worries about his ability to communicate with civilians. Nobody will want to hear my stories. He is experiencing what we now call transitional anxiety. The film, The Best Years of Our Lives, released in 1946, brilliantly captured this difficult process of readjustment for three returning veterans. The points system that George mentions was the government's way of managing the demobilization of over 8 million service members. Soldiers were awarded points for their time in service, their time overseas, any decorations they had received, and the number of children they had. It was an attempt to make the process fair, but it also meant that units of men who had fought together for years were suddenly broken up, with each man going home on his own timetable. George's plea for his wife to be patient with me is a recognition that his homecoming will not be a simple movie-style reunion. It will be a process, and it might be a difficult one. He is asking for her help. He is admitting his own vulnerability, a difficult thing for a man who has been trained to be tough and self-reliant. The letters written in this period between the end of the war and the soldier's actual return are filled with this mixture of excitement and anxiety. They are letters from a liminal space, a no man's land between the world of the soldier and the world of the civilian. The final questions are the ones that shape the post-war world. How did this generation of men, who had been so profoundly shaped by the war, go on to build the modern America? What were the invisible scars that they carried with them into their new lives as husbands, fathers, and workers? And how much of their famous silence about the war was not just about the horror, but about the deep and abiding love they felt for the men they left behind and the world they could never fully explain. Number 2, what is the last thing you would say? He knows he's not going to make it. He is wounded badly. He is lying in a field hospital, and he can feel his life slipping away. The morphine has dulled the pain, but it has not dulled his mind. He has one last thing he needs to do. He asks the nurse for a piece of paper and a pencil. His handwriting is weak and shaky. He is writing a letter to his wife. It is a letter he knew he might have to write one day. He has rehearsed the words in his head 1,000 times. My dearest Anna, if you are reading this, it means I didn't get home. Don't be sad. Please, don't be sad. I lived a good life. And the best part of it was you. Marrying you was the smartest thing I ever did. I want you to be happy, find a good man, get married again, have children, live a long and beautiful life. That is my last wish. Don't waste your tears on me. Tell my parents I love them. Tell them I'm sorry. I'm not scared. I am thinking of your face. It's the last thing I will see. I love you forever. Your Tom. This is the last letter. It is the most feared and most sacred document of war. Many soldiers wrote such a letter before going into a major battle and entrusted it to a friend, with the instruction to mail it only if they were killed. And others, like Tom, wrote it in their final moments. There are no more lies in this letter. There is no brave front, no false optimism. There is only pure, distilled love and a final set of instructions. The letter is a will, not of property, but of emotion. Tom's final act on Earth is to try and take care of his wife, to give her permission to live and be happy. The historian Andrew Carroll, whose Legacy Project has collected and preserved tens of thousands of war letters, has said that these last letters are often the most eloquent and profound. In the face of death, all the trivialities of life are stripped away. What remains is what truly matters: love, family, and the hope that one's life had meaning. Tom's letter is a masterpiece of selfless love. His primary concern is not his own death, but his wife's future happiness. His command, "Don't be sad," is impossible, but it is a testament to his love. He is trying to ease her pain even as he is dying. His final words, "I am thinking of your face. It's the last thing I will see, are a final, beautiful gift." He is giving her the comfort of knowing that his last thought was of her. The journey of this letter is a tragic one. It will be collected with his other personal effects. It will be sent across the ocean. It will arrive at his wife's home, a ghost in an envelope. For Anna, this piece of paper will become the most precious and most painful object she will ever own. It is the last time she will ever hear her husband's voice. These letters force us to confront the ultimate cost of war. It is not about statistics or strategies. It is about the loss of a single, irreplaceable life. It is about a future that was stolen. It is about a love story that ended too soon. Tom was not a soldier when he wrote this letter. He was a husband. And his last act was an act of love. The final unanswerable questions are the heaviest. How many of these last letters were written but never sent, their authors surviving against the odds? How many men died without the chance to write one, leaving only a devastating silence behind? And for the women like Anna who received such a letter, was it a comfort or a wound that would never, ever heal? Number 1, what does a ghost ask for? The war has been over for a year. A young woman is trying to move on with her life. Her fiancé was killed in the last weeks of the war. She has put away his picture. She has stopped wearing his ring. She is trying to look forward, not back. Then a letter arrives. It is in his handwriting. The postmark is from a small town in France. It is dated over a year ago. It is a letter that has been lost in the vast chaotic machinery of the military postal service. It has been sitting in a forgotten mailbag in a warehouse somewhere. Now, it has finally found its way home. Her hands tremble as she opens it. It is a letter from a ghost. "My dearest Jane, I'm writing this from a small village. It's beautiful here. The war is almost over. We can all feel it. The sun is shining today, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm gonna make it home. I have been thinking about us, about the house we are going to build, the one with the big porch. I can see you there, sitting in a rocking chair, and I can see our kids playing in the yard. I bought you something. It's stupid. It's a little music box from a shop in the village. It plays a pretty tune. I'll give it to you when I see you. It shouldn't be long now. Get ready, my love. Our life is about to begin. All my love, Michael." The letter falls from her hands. It is not a goodbye letter. It is a letter full of plans, of hope, of a future that she knows will never happen. It is a detailed blueprint for a life that was never built. The ghost of the man she loved is not asking her to mourn him. He is asking her to get ready for a life with him. This is perhaps the most heart-wrenching letter of all. It is a message of pure hope, delivered after all hope is gone. It is a time capsule of a moment when everything seemed possible. The postal system during the war was a miracle of logistics, but it was not perfect. Letters were lost, mailbags were sunk on ships, destroyed in plane crashes, or simply misplaced in the chaos. Some of these letters, like Michael's, would surface months or even years later, long after the sender was dead. This letter is a cruel trick of time. It resurrects the dead only to kill him again. For Jane, the grieving process, which she had just begun, is now thrown into reverse. She is forced to relive the moment of hope, the moment before the terrible news arrived. She can see the future they had planned in his own optimistic, loving words. The details in the letter are what make it so devastating. The big porch, the children in the yard, the little music box. These are the small, tangible pieces of their shared dream. The music box, which she will never receive, becomes a symbol of all their lost plans. This letter is not about the war. It is about the peace that was supposed to follow. It is about the normal, happy life that was the ultimate promise, the reason for all the fighting and sacrifice. And it is about the tragic reality that for so many, that promise was broken. Michael's final words, "Our life is about to begin," are the most tragic of all. They are filled with the certainty of a young man in love who believes he has survived the worst. He does not know that his life is in fact about to end. We are left with the most profound questions of all. How does a person survive receiving a letter from the dead? Does it bring comfort or does it only deepen the wound? And what is the true legacy of war, if not the countless ghosts of futures that were never allowed to happen, preserved forever in the hopeful, heartbreaking words of a lost letter home?